I found a $250, $0 inheritance hidden in my late father's safe, only to discover my wife secretly sold the property and split the money with her brother, and now she's threatening to take everything including my house in court. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be a lying, cheating piece of work. Honestly, our marriage seemed pretty solid, at least, until I stumbled on something that blew my entire world apart. It all started with a simple, innocent search for some old family documents I wanted to organize. I was trying to clean out the safe in my late father's study, a place I'd rarely touched before. My father passed away 6 months ago, and I'd been slowly going through his stuff, trying to get a handle on what he left behind. One day, I found a hidden compartment behind a false panel in the safe. Inside was a bank envelope, and when I opened it, I nearly dropped my phone. It contained a handwritten note and a stack of documents, proof that my father's estate, which I'd always believed was modest, was actually worth over $250, $0 in inheritance. I knew my father had some savings, but he'd never mentioned anything like this. I felt a strange mix of shock and curiosity. I kept digging through the papers and receipts, trying to piece together what this inheritance was about. What I didn't realize at the time was that this discovery was just the beginning. That same day, I noticed Lisa acting a little off, more tense than usual, avoiding eye contact, and she kept brushing off my questions about her day. At first, I thought she was just stressed from work, but then I started noticing other things. Her phone kept ringing at odd hours, and she was secretive about her texts. She also started coming home later, claiming it was business dinners or late meetings, but I could tell she was hiding something. I decided to check her phone one night when she went to take a shower. I didn't dig for long, but long enough to find a string of texts between her and a guy named Mark. The messages were flirty, suggestive, and definitely not something a wife should be texting her husband's business partner or friend. They were talking about meeting up, and she kept saying how much she missed him. I felt my stomach tight. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I trusted, was cheating on me with someone I thought was just a harmless acquaintance. That moment hit me like a freight train. I sat there in the dark, holding her phone, feeling betrayed, furious, and completely lost. I'd always thought Lisa was my partner, my best friend, the one I could count on. Turns out she'd been lying to me from the start. The worst part, I had no idea how long this had been going on. I was staring at her texts, her lies, and I suddenly felt like I didn't even know who she was anymore. Everything we had built, our home, our future, my trust, felt like it was crumbling in that instant. I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. But I also knew that once I did, nothing would be the same again. I was torn between rage and heartbreak, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. All I knew was that I'd uncovered something that changed everything, and I had to decide what my next move was going to be. The next day I kept replaying everything in my head. I couldn't sleep and I couldn't eat. The image of Lisa's texts with Mark haunted me. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. That night I decided I had to confront her. I couldn't keep living in the dark, wondering how long she'd been lying, what she'd been doing behind my back. I needed the truth, even if it was going to destroy whatever was left of the marriage. I waited until she came home around 8 p.m., pretending to be busy with some work emails. She looked tense, more than usual, and I could see the nervous flicker in her eyes. When she finally sat down across from me, I didn't waste time. I pulled out her phone and showed her the messages. Her face instantly lost all color. She looked at me, eyes wide, then quickly tried to brush it off. "Oh, come on, Tom," she said with a forced laugh. "It's nothing, just some stupid text from Mark. It's not a big deal, you're overreacting." I clenched my fists. "Not a big deal, Lisa, this isn't just some innocent chat. You're cheating on me with Mark. How long has this been going on?" She scoffed, trying to dismiss it. "You're paranoid, you're always accusing me of stuff. Maybe you're the one who's been cheating, huh?" That's when I lost it. The anger exploded in me like a volcano. I found proof of the inheritance in Dad's safe. Over $250, $0, Lisa. Do you even know what that means? That money was supposed to be for us, for our future. And you sold property, split the money with your brother, and lied to my face all along. And now you're telling me it's nothing." Her eyes narrowed and she crossed her arms. "You don't know what you're talking about. I don't know where you got that idea, but I swear I didn't do anything wrong. You're just jealous because I've been working late and you're paranoid. And Mark, he's just a friend. Besides, I told you I was stressed about the estate. It's complicated, Tom. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I stared at her, feeling the bile rising in my throat. I knew she was lying. She always lied when she was cornered. But I also felt the sting of betrayal more than anything. How could she lie about everything? About the inheritance, about her affair, about us. It was like nothing was sacred anymore. I told her I wanted the truth, that I deserved honesty. She kept denying everything, throwing up excuses, saying I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that I was just insecure. But I saw through her lies. I could see she was trying to manipulate me, to keep her secrets hidden. I knew I had to dig deeper, find out what she'd been hiding all these months. That night I couldn't sleep. Instead, I stayed awake, trying to process everything. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to forget everything and pretend it never happened. But another part, the part that was furious and hurt, knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. I had to do something. I had to find out the full truth. And that's when I remembered something I'd seen earlier, an email from her brother about a property sale. It was strange because she'd never mentioned selling any property, especially not the inheritance. I decided to look into it more the next day. I knew that if she'd sold the property behind my back and split the money with her brother, there would be records somewhere. I was about to uncover a whole new layer of lies, and I had a sinking feeling that things were about to get a lot worse. The next morning, I started digging into the details. I wasn't just going to sit around and let her keep lying to my face. I pulled up the property records, bank statements, and emails from her brother. Turns out I wasn't imagining things. There was a sale, an off-the-books sale, that involved the property I'd recently discovered in my father's safe. The property was worth way more than she let on, and apparently she'd sold it without telling me, splitting the proceeds with her brother. The more I looked, the more I realized how deep her deception went. The sale had been done quietly, with no official record of me being involved or even knowing about it. She'd hidden the sale, and from what I could see, she'd already taken a sizable chunk of the inheritance, more than enough to cover her expenses and maybe even her secret affair with Mark. I felt like my world was collapsing again. I couldn't believe she'd been lying about everything, about her late nights, her business trips, her friendship with Mark, and now this, a secret sale of my inheritance. I kept asking myself, how long had she been planning this? How long had she been cheating and scheming behind my back? I thought about all the late nights I spent working, all the times I trusted her when she said she was busy with her job. Turns out she was busy selling off my family's assets and sharing the money with her brother, all while pretending everything was fine. I was furious, not just because she betrayed me, but because she did it so blatantly, so coldly. It wasn't just an affair. I was discovering that she'd been actively stealing from me, lying to my face about the entire estate. I decided I couldn't let her get away with this. I needed to confront her again, but this time with proof, with leverage. That afternoon, I called her at work, told her I needed to talk. She sounded nervous, trying to act like everything was normal. When she got home, I laid everything out, showed her the property sale records, the bank statements, the emails. Her face went pale. She tried to deny everything, but I was ready this time. I told her I knew she'd been lying all along, that I had proof of her betrayal, her theft, and her affair with Mark. Her eyes flickered with panic. "Tom, you're overreacting. This is all a misunderstanding. I didn't do anything wrong. You're just jealous and you're trying to control everything. I swear I didn't sell anything behind your back. You don't know what you're talking about." I stared at her coldly. "Stop lying. I know everything. You and your brother sold the property, split the money, and you thought you could hide it from me forever. Well, I'm not stupid. I've got the proof. And I'm telling you this is over. I want a divorce." Her face twisted into a snarl. "You're crazy. You're just jealous because I've been sleeping with Mark. That's why you're doing all this. You're insecure and you're trying to control me. Well, I won't let you take everything. You want a divorce? Fine, but I'll make sure I get everything, including the house. You'll regret pushing me." I felt my blood boil. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, was now threatening me over money and some pathetic affair. She thought she could scare me into backing down, but I'd had enough. I was done being played. That night I stayed up late, going through every piece of evidence I'd collected. I realized that her threats weren't empty, they were a warning. She was willing to fight dirty, to manipulate the courts, to take everything I owned if she had to. I knew I had to prepare myself for a war, because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my life, my future, and her complete betrayal. I made up my mind. I was going to fight for what was mine, for the inheritance, for the house, for my dignity. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she'd stolen. I was angry, hurt, but also determined. She had crossed a line, and I was ready to do whatever it took to make her pay. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, divorce papers, and long nights of thinking. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had unraveled. Just a few weeks ago, I was planning our future, dreaming about the house, the kids, maybe even retiring early. Now I was staring at a mountain of lies and betrayal. Lisa wasn't just cheating on me. She was actively stealing from me, and I was furious about it. I met with a lawyer, a no-nonsense guy named Robert who specialized in family law and estate disputes. I showed him everything I had: emails, bank statements, property records. He told me I had a solid case for full custody of the house and the inheritance, especially since Lisa's actions clearly showed a pattern of deceit. But he warned me that she'd fight dirty, and I needed to be prepared for her to try and spin things to her advantage. The first court hearing was the day I dreaded most. Lisa showed up with her bitchy attitude, trying to act like everything was normal. She was dressed to impress, all smiles and fake charm. She tried to deny everything, said I was a paranoid husband, that I had no proof, that I was just jealous of her relationship with Mark. She even had the nerve to cry fake tears, acting like I was some kind of monster for accusing her of stealing her own father's inheritance. But I had the evidence. I had the emails, the property sale records, the bank statements that proved she'd lied, sold the property behind my back, and split the money with her brother. When my lawyer presented everything, Lisa's face went pale. The judge looked at her skeptically, asking her to explain the inconsistencies. She stammered, tried to lie her way out, but it was clear she was caught. The courtroom erupted into a heated exchange. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that I was unstable, that I'd been controlling and suspicious. But Robert shot her down. He laid out the facts: how Lisa had sold the property, split the inheritance without my knowledge, and was now threatening to take the house in court. The judge listened carefully and finally ruled that Lisa had no legal claim to the inheritance or the house, given her deception and betrayal. That moment felt like a victory, but it was short-lived. Lisa's threats still hung in the air. She promised revenge, swore she'd fight me for everything, and said she'd ruin me if she had to. I knew she wasn't going to go quietly. She was the kind of woman who would burn everything down just to get what she wanted. I started to prepare myself mentally for the battle ahead. I filed for divorce, and I made sure the court knew about her lies, her theft, her affair. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, just in case she tried to pull any more surprises. I couldn't afford to let my guard down. I was angry, hurt, but I knew I had to stay strong. This wasn't over yet. The thing that hurt the most wasn't just the money or the house, it was the betrayal. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, had been lying and scheming behind my back for who knows how long. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she turn my entire life into a lie? But deep down, I knew I had to move forward no matter how much it hurt. I couldn't let her win, not after everything she'd done. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine, and I was ready to do just that. The court proceedings dragged on, and Lisa's behavior became more erratic with each passing day. She started showing up at my workplace, trying to guilt-trip me with tears and false accusations, claiming I was ruining her life. She even tried to manipulate the court by claiming I was mentally unstable, that I was paranoid because I couldn't handle losing her. It was disgusting, but I knew her game. I had the evidence, and I was determined not to let her get away with it. Meanwhile, I focused on building my case, gathering more proof of her ongoing lies and theft. I hired a forensic accountant to dig into her financial records, and it turned up even more startling details. She'd been funneling money from our joint accounts into secret accounts, probably to hide her affairs and her thefts. It all added up. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. One afternoon, I received a call from my pi. He told me Lisa had been meeting with a divorce attorney behind my back, trying to negotiate a settlement that would give her everything: my house, the inheritance, even my retirement savings. That was the last straw. I realized she was willing to go to any lengths, even lie and cheat her way to get what she wanted. I sat down with Robert, my lawyer, and we drafted a detailed response to her latest maneuver. I also filed for full custody of our kids. If she was capable of lying and scheming like this, I didn't trust her to be a good mother anymore. My priority was protecting my children from her manipulative ways and making sure they were taken care of, no matter what happened between us. The court date finally arrived, and I was ready. I felt a strange mixture of anger and relief. I knew I'd done everything I could to prove her guilt and protect what was mine. Lisa arrived early, looking desperate, trying to put on her usual act. She threw a few petty insults my way, trying to rattle me, but I kept my composure. I knew I had the truth on my side. When the judge called the case, I laid out everything: her lies, her theft, her affair with Mark, her attempts to manipulate the court. I presented all the evidence: the emails, the property records, the financial statements. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that she was a victim, that I was trying to control her, but the judge wasn't buying it. The evidence was too overwhelming. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. She awarded me full custody of the kids, declared that Lisa had committed financial fraud, and ordered her to return the stolen inheritance and property sale proceeds. The house was awarded to me as well. Lisa sat there fuming, trying to hide her rage, but I saw the defeat in her eyes. She knew she'd lost, but the victory was bittersweet. I felt exhausted, drained, and broken inside. I'd lost the woman I loved, the trust I once had, and even though I'd won legally, the emotional scars remained. I knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I'd have to rebuild my life from the rubble of her lies and betrayal. As I walked out of the courtroom that day, I couldn't help but reflect on everything I'd learned. Trust is fragile, and betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. I realized I'd been blind for too long, ignoring the signs, convincing myself that everything was perfect. But now I understood. Sometimes you have to fight for yourself, for your future, even if it means losing the person you thought was your everything. I was going to move on, stronger and wiser, but I'd never forget the pain of this betrayal. It changed me forever. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt an odd sense of relief mixed with an emptiness I couldn't quite shake. I had fought hard, and I'd won what was rightfully mine: my inheritance, my house, and custody of my kids. But the victory came at a cost. I'd lost the woman I loved, the trust I once had, and a piece of myself in the process. It was a bitter pill to swallow, knowing that the woman I had dedicated my life to had been lying and scheming behind my back for so long. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding. I hired a new lawyer to handle the divorce, and to make sure Lisa's attempts at manipulation and revenge wouldn't succeed. I kept the evidence close, just in case she tried to come back with more lies or schemes. I also made a conscious effort to focus on my kids, giving them stability and love, even as my heart was heavy with betrayal. One day I sat in my new house, one I had paid for, with the inheritance she thought she could steal, and I looked around. It was quiet, peaceful, and mine. I realized that the betrayal had opened my eyes. I no longer trusted blindly, and I understood the importance of being cautious. But I also learned that I was stronger than I thought, that I could survive even the deepest heartbreak if I stayed true to myself. I've come to accept that some people are just not meant to be in your life forever. Lisa's actions showed me that. She was selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for her own benefit. But I refused to let her define me or my future. I've learned to be more cautious, more aware, and most importantly, to trust my instincts. Looking back, I see everything clearly now. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal, they all taught me a harsh but valuable lesson. Never ignore the signs, never settle for less than the truth, and never let anyone take what's yours without a fight. Life is too precious, and I'm grateful I fought for mine, even if it meant losing the person I once loved. Now I focus on healing and moving forward. I've started new routines, built a better relationship with my kids, and even begun dating again, carefully this time. I still have scars, but they remind me of what I've endured and how far I've come. I know there will be more challenges ahead, but I'm ready for them. This experience has changed me forever. I don't take trust lightly anymore, and I've learned that sometimes the greatest strength is in knowing when to walk away. I hope sharing my story might help someone else see the red flags earlier, trust their gut, and never stay silent when they're being betrayed. Because in the end, you have to fight for yourself. And if you do, you might just come out stronger on the other side.